Welcome to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. KC Cares is proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. Ewing Kauffman is part of Kansas City legend. While many remember him as the man who brought the Kansas City Royals and baseball team to its first World Series, Kauffman's impact reverberates over and over again through the foundation he started back in 1966. A self-made man and a creative genius, Kauffman had the foresight to invest in the people of Kansas City through his foundation, with its focus on entrepreneurship and education. A humanitarian at heart, Kauffman saw the value of pulling people and organizations together, collaborating to make our town and the world beyond a better place. Now, some 55 years later, the Kauffman Foundation, with more than $3 billion in assets, continues its mission of its founder by confronting the challenging issues of our time and leading this robust foundation. As its president and CEO is Wendy Guillies. Wendy has been at the foundation since 2000 and has been CEO for 6 years. And we're so happy to welcome you to the program.
Thank you, Ruth. I am very happy to be here.
And I want to be sure to tell our audience we are actually at the Kauffman Foundation in separate rooms, so we're taking all those precautions. But it's really great to kind of be out and about and remember this as a place that we could all come to and gather. So we'll keep fingers crossed that as we move forward, that will happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have people back. It feels good, doesn't it?
It feels great. So I have to share with our audience, you were the keynote speaker at an event hosted by Nonprofit Connect, Bank of America, and Vern Polofsky, doing a presentation today on working together for systems change through philanthropy. Oh my gosh, that is a big, big nugget to tackle, but you did it beautifully. And there's so much meat that I'm so anxious to dive into this. I'm curious, was this topic something you chose? Was there guidance there? How did kind of that overall arching issue come to fruition?
Well, I think it was a little of both, right? So it's really just reflective of kind of where we are as a foundation. This is on our minds every day. Also sort of what's going on in society, right? And what would be of interest, what's on the minds of the nonprofit sector. So I think it was kind of really sort of a meeting of the minds about what would be the best issues to tackle at that presentation.
And as I mentioned, there is a lot of meat in that. Maybe you can just give us a little kind of McNugget of what you deliver, because there were really key takeaways that I want us to dive into. But if you can kind of give that little bit of an overview of what you shared.
Sure. Well, yeah, you're right. It's a big topic. I obviously shared what our mission is and our priorities, but I really focused the first part of the talk on just the economic inequality that exists in this country and how it's gotten even wider during, the last couple of years during the pandemic and the amplification of racial injustice. And we're seeing those disparities and those gaps even more so. And so just talking about how that's not sustainable for our society, our economy. And all the tragic things that happen when there's people at the bottom of the scale that aren't able to get the work they need or make the money they need to thrive. And then I spent the balance of the speech talking about the fact that this is an opportune time for us to do something about, not us, the Kauffman Foundation, of course we're included, but the whole sector and everyone to pull together within their own mission areas to make a difference. And with federal funds, flowing like never before seen in our lifetimes, there's an opportunity to help shape that. We can't control the money, but we can shape how it's used and try to influence it so it's used for the best and highest purpose. And I shared a few things about what the foundation's working on to try to kind of change the conditions that will allow people to thrive in Kansas City and in communities across the country.
We'll dive into that meat in a minute, but I wanted to also give you an opportunity to talk about how the foundation has weathered this last 20 plus months of pandemic and what were the things that you were able to do and or pivot to make happen?
Yeah. You know what? I told our board a couple months ago that I don't think there's anything that we haven't pivoted on. I mean, we have really been examining everything. And I feel like there's so many different inflection points and we're evolving. We're expanding some things. So lots of change just to, in some ways, we were on a path toward racial equity and diversity and inclusion. Our work has really been about that for a while, but I think we just got much more clear about what our focus is and what we stand for and the impact we're trying to achieve and for whom. It's been hard on everybody, including the foundation, but we also realized that we were extremely blessed. We could work from home. We were able to do all our business that we need to do. We could make our grants and everything that we were, and not everyone was so lucky, and we understand that. So we feel blessed. We've prioritized safety and health of our associates. So we're not fully back in the office yet. And like I said, we've examined everything from our strategies to our grant making process to make sure it's equitable, and starting to work more in the community around racial equity with a community of practice that we started up. So happy to go into any one of those things, but it's just been a year of change, and I think change that's been positive and probably long overdue, but we got a kick in the pants last year.
Boy, have we ever, and I'm not sure we're done being kicked yet.
Right.
But at least we're walking down the street at this point. Well, I recall one of the things that you talked about is the need to look at your areas of education and entrepreneurship, maybe in a refined lens. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so actually, even before the pandemic started, we articulated a couple foundation-wide priorities. Yes, we do education, we do entrepreneurship, we have a Casey civic arm, we have public affairs, but we were really searching for, like, what does all that add up to? What do we stand for? What is our collective work, trying to do? And that's a prepared workforce, in which people are equipped to, excel in careers and jobs. And it's entrepreneur-focused economic development, which is, let's help people in local communities grow their own businesses instead of trying to rely on stealing companies away from other cities and states, right? Which is, ultimately has a net negative effect, I think. So we got clear on our priorities, and then really, I'm losing your question, but we looked at our program areas and said, are we really going after the gaps? Are we really helping the people that are farthest behind? And in most cases we were, but we need to do more. We need to double down on that. So we established goals that are aimed at lifting up BIPOC communities, both in entrepreneurship and in education, and really just, like I said, refining those program strategies so that we are very clear about what we're trying to do and for whom.
You had also mentioned that you're doing this based in data and research. Share with us how you get that kind of information and what it kind of has told you. You were very specific in some of those numbers. And
Right.
I don't want to make you have to go digging through your
No, it's okay.
files there for the numbers, but just so we get a really good picture of the approach that the foundation has taken.
Right. So we use a variety of data and evidence. Some of it is quantitative, some of it's qualitative. I'll give you a few examples. We take data that already exists out there from census and surveys and other things, and that's some of the statistics you heard me talking about, where when it comes to starting a business, Black Americans, women are trying to start a business, lag behind in terms of funding and growth potential. We look at student achievement and we see the gaps there. So we look at data that exists. We do some of our own research, meaning we partner with scholars to uncover some things that we're curious about. And then we talk to a lot of people. I mentioned that we do something called a Heartland Challenge, which is a funding program in our entrepreneurship area that's targeted at organizations in Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, which we call the MINK states, who are supporting entrepreneurs. And before we launched that program, our entrepreneurship team went around and talked to more than 100 entrepreneurs and entrepreneur support folks in those 4 states to find out what the needs were, what the gaps were, where are their challenges, where are their opportunities. And we built a funding program around that. So that's a case of where we listened to people, and that's how we got, some of the data.
And people were willing to talk.
Oh,
Did
absolutely.
you find, I've always been a little curious, when you're digging into things that for some folks are very kind of personal. If you're starting a business, often it comes from that gut passion, and then you're asking those questions that may be off-putting at first, but it sounds like it allows you then to really address those challenges and those, hard to get at issues. Now, as you've been doing this, the pandemic, has it just made things better, worse? I can guess the answer, but I'm going to let you share.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you're talking about. If we're talking about the entrepreneurship sector, it's really bizarre. Some companies did very well. Tech companies that are able to do their things virtually, they were actually thriving. Obviously, the retail, hospitality industry, small businesses in that sector, did horribly. So it was really uneven. And that's really the story of entrepreneurship across the country. It's very uneven. Some do very well, many do not, and they're left behind. I think it just exacerbated and amplified the problems that already exist in terms of inequities in our community. And I think there are people that were struggling that we saw struggle even more. We know that 40% of Black-owned businesses shuttered in 2020 during the pandemic. We're starting to see the effects on students of that, lost learning time, and we're sorting that out now. And like you said, I don't know that we have come out of this in a way that we really know fully the effects, but absolutely it amplified and made things worse across the board.
To your credit, though, the foundation has kind of seized the day, carpe diem, and come up with some things to move us forward and hopefully improve, maybe not get rid of problems, but improve that. And one of the things that I captured, and maybe it's the overall global, is America's new business plan.
Right.
Can you outline for our audience a little bit what that encompasses and how the foundation is moving forward with that?
Sure. So America's New Business Plan is really a platform of policy ideas at the local, federal, state level of practical things that can be implemented to make our economy and our society more equitable and more inclusive and more vibrant. And it really does cut across. It includes education, it includes entrepreneurship. There's lots of ideas in there that are based on research and evidence and things that have worked. So they're heavily vetted. I think we're in our third or fourth iteration of America's New Business Plan. We put it out, I think, maybe 3 years ago, and have come up with a new version, just again, based on changes in society and new and better ways of, we call rebuilding better. And so it's a platform of 4 pillars, and there's lots of great ideas in there. A couple that I'll point out. One is around capital access for entrepreneurs. We know from research and anecdotal evidence that that's a real issue for everyone, but it's especially an issue for entrepreneurs of color, for women entrepreneurs, and for those trying to start a business in small towns and rural America. And so there are a number of policy ideas in there. The foundation also has some programs trying to address capital access, both at the local and national level. One at the local level is our funding of AltCap, which is a CDFI, to provide expanded microloans for small businesses, especially during the pandemic when they've, struggling especially. And we hope to expand that in the coming months and years to, like I said, double down, triple down, make it even bigger so there's more small business support. And the other, another area around our education work is something I call real world learning, which I can go on and on about this. So I'll pause and see if you want me to expand any more on America's New Business Plan. But I encourage everyone to look at it. It's on the web at startusupnow.org. And like I said, it's chock full of practical ideas that can help real people.
I'm so glad you gave that URL because I want people to be able to go and look at it and digest it, et cetera. And then they can always come back to Kauffman.org and find staff or whoever to have a conversation about that. So I really would encourage our audience to, be part of this trip, this mission to move forward. I do want to get into the workforce, the real world learning, rather,
It's a
that you
tongue
shared.
twister. It's a tongue twister.
That's what you got to love about conversation. But I thought that was so interesting, the concept, and then you gave some great examples, and I'd love for you to share that so people can really see this works.
Yes. Yeah, this is something that we are particularly excited about, because I would call the Real World Learning Initiative almost like a movement in Kansas City right now. It has taken off, and school districts are owning this, and their boards are owning it, and the students are owning it. It started as this idea of, our schools really preparing students for the real world. And there's really valuable things that can happen outside of the textbook. Of course, there's valuable things to learn in the textbook. I'm not saying that, but there's great experiences. And so we did a landscape kind of analysis of what was already going on in school districts in our 6-county metro area, and found that every school district was doing something like this. They were offering these real learning experiences outside of the classroom for their students, but a fraction of their students. So maybe a couple hundred students, or, a couple dozen students would take advantage of these opportunities. And so what our funding has done and our technical assistance has done is really help these districts plan for how to scale real world learning so it's available to every student. And when I talk about real world learning, it's things like internships, it's client projects, it's students doing a project for an employer outside of the school. It's getting college credit while you're in school. It's getting an industry recognized credential certificate while you're in school, or having an entrepreneurial experience. These are things that really give kids these essential skills and help them see how relevant what they're learning in school is, for when they graduate. I did give a couple examples. One was high school students in the Center High School District here in Kansas City did a project with an early learning center. And the early learning center, because of COVID, had to cancel all the field trips for their preschoolers. So they engaged these students to create virtual reality experiences for the preschoolers based on what the teachers were, teaching in class, and also what, they thought the kids would think is cool. And so that's a great example of, like, they had to work in teams. They had to kind of present their ideas. And so again, these are ways for students to do things that, like, I can learn about marketing in a textbook, but if I'm doing a marketing plan for an organization, I'm going to get a whole different kind of appreciation for it. And I think we all know technical skills are important, but things like collaboration and communication and presentation skills and doing your research and taking feedback, these are the essential skills that every student needs, no matter what they end up doing in life, and that every employer values, including, I'm sure, you and I, Ruth.
I love the pegboard example that you gave as well. That to me was just like a gift for
Yes.
really two populations that were having different kinds of struggles. Kids in school dealing with a pandemic year, of course, and then kids with what I call diffabilities. Some people call it disabilities, and needing things on both sides. If you
Yes.
wouldn't mind just sharing that as well.
Sure. So this was the Olathe School District. The biomechanical engineering students partnered with a physical therapist who was having challenges doing play therapy with some of her students that had developmental delays and challenges. And so these bioengineering or biomechanical students got a briefing document from the physical therapist, and they created busy boards, which are sort of motor skills activity boards based on what the students would want and need. And so they had to learn to, kind of come up with a proposal and design it, and then redesign it based on feedback. And they ended up donating these busy boards to the students. And so what a great experience it was for those students, and also for those kids. I mean, it was a win-win.
So how does the foundation take this out beyond those schools that have already been touched and are already doing this?
So, I mean, we haven't hit every single school district, but we got quite a few, I think over 32, plus there's some charters thrown in there. So we continue, we have like kind of cohorts. And so we'll bring more into the fold, but we don't, it's kind of opt-in. We started by talking to some superintendents, and they invited some superintendents, and they invited some superintendents. And so really it's really an opt-in situation. And in terms of more broadly though, Ruth, we try to share what we're learning with others, and then we learn a lot in return. So we have talked about this regionally and nationally, not to try to replicate the program, to say like, hey, this is what we're working on. Is there anything like this that you know about, and how can we be better at this? How can we share what we're doing? So if it resonates with you, with other funders and such, we work with a national expert named Tom Vander Ark, who's called this initiative, I'm going to say it because it's his words, the most exciting education reform effort in the country, because of the scale of it.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. So we're going down this road of enhancing real life work experience, and we're trying to get more entrepreneurs into a pipeline where there's access to funding and other kinds of support. How does the Kauffman Foundation, like do that and all the other things that you do? I mean, you're still seen, I think, in the community by nonprofits. You are the big guys, and I use that term very loosely. And the question was asked during the session about, folks who may be intimidated. So I guess I asked you two questions there: is how does the Kauffman Foundation move forward with that? And then we'll come back to the other.
Yeah. So how do we do that in all our other areas? I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we have, the scope of what we're trying to do and the problems we're trying to solve are enormous, right? So I think we try to serve different roles. We try to be catalytic. We're not going to do everything, but if we can like support someone else to get something off the ground, we try to find the gaps in the community, like I said, where things aren't working optimally, and maybe where no one else but a foundation can support it. No one else will. So like, let's do that because no one else is. We also think we play a pretty important role in bringing people together and convening. And, sometimes you have disparate folks that they're, trying to work on the same issue, but if we can kind of bring them together to share lessons, that's an important role we play. So we try to leverage our funding, which is, it sounds like a lot, but it's tiny in comparison to the issues we're trying to solve, by using some of these other techniques, by convening, by bringing people together to learn from each other, and by trying to, really leverage our network of partners out there. I'm not sure if I answered your question, Ruth, but if I didn't,
it was a great answer, though.
Great answer to a different question.
That's okay. I would want to know, how do you get people to collaborate and cooperate when we're still in this awful world of pandemic? And as we were talking, there's nothing like being in the room where it happens, to steal a line from Hamilton, but there is that synergy when you can be together. So are there things that you've been able to do to enhance that? How has that worked for you all?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know that we are doing it any better than anyone else, and we have the same challenges. So we haven't had big meetings yet. We've certainly all, I think, gotten accustomed to all the little tricks you can do with Zoom, with small rooms and breakout rooms. And so we're doing all of that. But yeah, it's challenging. I mean, I guess we just haven't stopped though. Save for maybe a few weeks there in March, we were all, sort of like trying to get our footing. We've continued, we've moved all of our events, or we did last year anyway, and most of this year, to Zoom. I think in some ways we've been able to draw more participants. We do something called an eShip Summit. And we in 2020, we had like double the number of participants because people didn't have to fly here and spend the money. And so, in some ways there was some benefits. I think that, so again, I think we're doing the best we can, and do look forward to getting back to when we're in person, and we're doing small meetings now. But I think the key thing is, Ruth, we just didn't stop. We just kept going and just in a different format, but made the best of it.
I will circle back to the long-winded question, but the second half of it. You all are seen as the big players in town, one of the big players in terms of foundation world, and perhaps some are hesitant to reach up or feel like you're an untouchable. One gentleman had asked a question during this session.
Right.
So how would you answer that? And how can nonprofits and even people in the profit community engage with what the foundation is working so hard to do?
Yeah. First thing I'd say is get to know us and what we do. And that's easy to do by going to our website. We have regular, email communications that go out that talk about the work we're doing. We feature our grantees. We tell stories. Some of the real world learning stories I told you, we feature. So you get some real insight into what we care about, the issues, and it's not just us talking. It's our partners, talking about their work. We also use that mechanism on our website and our email newsletters to talk about when we're doing open RFPs. We do a lot of those. I think we're doing 11 RFPs next year. Now they're in our spaces. So, if you're in healthcare, that's not something we're going to be supporting because that's not part of our scope. But we do that for a reason, Ruth, in the community, in the Heartland and nationally, is because we don't know what everybody's doing. We can't possibly meet with everybody, and there's great work out there that maybe we've never heard about. So we often get dozens and hundreds of applicants, and we fund organizations that we've never funded before through those. So I'd say encourage nonprofits to look for those opportunities, and if it fits with what they do and with what we're trying to kind of spur, then apply. It's open application. I'd say, I think the nonprofits that came to the Nonprofit Connect today also just network with people. The foundation, our staff, we try to be out now. Again, we haven't been out in the community in the last year like we had been, but we'll get back there.
Right.
But we're trying to be out in the community, networking and meeting people and making connections. So those would be a few ways I'd say. You can find us on our website. You can send emails, at info, I think it's info@kauffman.org. I'm not sure about that, but you can send inquiries in. There's a grant application site. So there's multiple ways to do that.
Well, I think one thing you mentioned that was exciting is you said you're going to streamline your grant process. I think any nonprofit person that works in grants was jumping up and down. It seems like the last quarter of the year, particularly, anybody who deals with grants is like, don't talk to me. I'm in the middle of my grant cycle. At
Yes.
any rate, the one thing I wanted to mention that I think of you guys as the EEC and not the Equal Employment Commission, but the Educational Entrepreneurship Collaborative Foundation, because you've really thrown out there the importance for organizations to collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a throwback, you think, to Mr. Kauffman, to Mr. K?
I think so. I mean, I mentioned one of his quotes at the event this morning. I know I'll say it because I have it memorized. It's one of my favorites, and it speaks to the power of collaboration because he knew that even back then when our resources weren't as great as they are now, he knew that we'd never have enough money to really solve the issues we want to. And so what he said was, all the money in the world can't solve problems unless we work together. But if we work together, there is no problem in the world that can stop us as we seek to develop people to their highest and best potential. So I absolutely think that's a throwback to Mr. Kauffman. He was a great listener. He got ideas from all sorts of places. And I think, that's just something that we need to be ever mindful of at the foundation.
Well, and you all are great listeners. I remember kind of in closing today and in the question and answer was the advice given is, be a listener on both sides so that you really can hear where things are at, where the problems lie, and then maybe working together to create those solutions.
Absolutely.
All oars in the water, so to speak. Well, the community is so grateful to have the Kauffman Foundation and to have you at the helm. I know you must have started this when you were 15, since we're about the same time, but it's so great in the direction and the resource that it provides in the community. So we thank you for that, and thank you for giving us some of your time. You guys are so busy. So we appreciate that, Wendy.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. And you know what? We wouldn't be able to do anything if not for the great partners we have in this community. So they're the real heroes. But thank you. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for listening and watching Casey Cares. We're Kansas City's nonprofit voice, and we're produced by Charitable Communications, proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. If you'd like to be a guest on Casey Cares or underwriting opportunities to support our work, please visit our website at kccaresonline.org and spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And catch us on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM Saturday mornings, bright and early at 8 a.m. Thank you for being part of Casey Cares.